the 14th of October, 2025. And here in Israel, it is a holiday. It's the end of the Sukkot holiday, Simchat Torah, and all that. So it's literally exactly 2 years since October 7th, 2023, on the Jewish calendar, meaning exactly 2 years on the Jewish calendar have passed now since the hostages were taken and all those people were butchered by the Hamas pigs and their ilk on that awful day, 2023. And yes, I did just dehumanize them a little bit and call them pigs because that's what they are. I'm not going to make it nice and polite in this particular video. The Hamas scumbag terrorists have broken the deal that they made with Israel. First of all, yes, they told us that they would have trouble finding some of the hostages, and that they said that it would take maybe some days to find them all, and that maybe one, a couple of them may be harder to find, but that generally speaking, pretty much all of them would be returned within days. And while they did release all of the living hostages yesterday, and that's wonderful, and Israel has been very happy in celebrating that, it's been very moving and touching to see their families' reactions to them coming home. Those scumbag Hamas terrorists and their ilk only released 4 of the bodies of dead hostages yesterday, and that means that they still have 24 to release as of yesterday. Today was a holiday, so who knows if they've released any or not by now. Personally, I have not checked, or I've not seen any updates, I should say, about that, because it may take more days for them to release any more of them, which means they're still holding 24 bodies in Gaza, and which means um, that is not going according to the plan, insofar as the plan was going to go forward at all in any way, shape, or form. Now, what is even more of a violation of the deal than that is the fact that they have said openly on multiple channels for multiple days that they do not agree to anything except phase 1 of this agreement, which says that Israel is going to cease fire, and the Hamas will cease fire, and Israel will withdraw to the 50% line in Gaza, which they've already done, and then there will be the exchange of hostages for terrorists. And that has already happened, except for the fact that they have not released all of the hostages yet. And they've said that beyond phase 1, they do not agree to anything, and everything is up for negotiation, which means they don't agree to the timeline for when the supposed international force is going to come and take over. They don't even agree to give up their weapons, and they've already made demands like, we'll only give up weapons to another Palestinian group. So they've created, as I told you they would, they created another fake group called the Gaza Security Police, which is, exactly what I told you they were going to do. Create another fake group, create another group, whatever, and put all the same people, just operate under that name. And that's exactly what they're doing. And they've gone around Gaza now and started massacring hundreds of people that oppose them. Why have they done that? They've done that to secure power, because they don't want to have anybody or any organization that can take over power from them. And of course, the people who are ignorant about all of this believe that, in fact, they are sticking to their word and that it's all propaganda and that they're not killing anyone. Meanwhile, you have literally Arab reporters who are very pro-Palestinian, who are constantly reporting pro-Palestinian things and anti-Israel things, saying, in fact, Hamas is doing these atrocities. We're talking about very well-known, very well-established reporters who are pro-Hamas, frankly, but not pro-Palestinian because they support a terrorist organization ruling over the Palestinians, but they consider themselves pro-Palestinian, which is a joke to me because they're not. But they are the ones who are saying, no, this massacre is actually happening. And you see tons of videos, an increasing amount of videos from influencers that are, consider themselves to be pro-Palestinian, people in Gaza, people in, all over the place, but specifically in Gaza, we're seeing more and more social influencers saying, yes, the Hamas is walking around with guns, going from home to home, and they are literally shooting entire families wholesale, including men, women, and children, because they don't want to give up the power to those people. They want to control what's going on in Gaza. and they don't want to give up any control, even if they have to. So they get rid of all the opposition, and then they say, well, we have this new group that formed after the ceasefire, so therefore that's the new group we're going to transfer power to, which is of course just Hamas by another name. So that will not fly with the Israelis. Certainly it should not fly with the Israeli public. I know people think, well, Trump's going to tell Israel to not restart the war just because of minor violations, and I'm telling you, that's not a minor violation, and Israel should not stand by that, and Israel should absolutely already be calling for Hamas to stop killing people, and should be basically doing what it can to stop them from killing people, including taking back land in Gaza and saying, nope, you broke the deal a little bit. We're going to do the same. We're going to get, take a little bit of land. And every time you violate the deal, we're going to take a little bit more. And they should be doing that without end until the situation is resolved, because it is not acceptable. And people will say, well, it's inevitable that they would attack the people that were collaborating with Israel. Yo, Gan, I see you. So it is not acceptable to me at all in any way, shape, or form that what's happening right now is happening right now. Like, absolutely not okay that they are breaking this deal, and they are refusing to give up power, and they're demanding to negotiate everything that they've already signed onto. Right? They agreed to it, and now they're saying, well, we don't actually agree to it. Did I not tell you this is exactly what's going to happen? Did I not tell you? While I am cautiously optimistic, I am realistic, and I understand they are most probably lying, and they're going to break the deal probably sooner rather than later. And here we are. Okay, now you can say, well, that's just posturing, because of course they're going to give up all of the hostages, even the dead ones, and they're absolutely going to, do what they have to do according to the letter of the agreement, because they know that Israel has all the leverage now. Once, even the fact that all the living ones are back gives Israel all the leverage, because now we know they can't kill any more hostages. At least we assume that, because there's still actually one more hostage that may or may not be alive. But unfortunately, we presume he's dead. So that's very unfortunate. But yeah, it is presumed that he's dead, since they've said they've given up all the living hostages, which means they have no more leverage. So the only thing they have is to try to regroup, retrain, resupply, rearm, and replan the next attack, which is exactly what they're going to do. So if you think for 1 second that Hamas is actually entering a peace deal with Israel right now, you're delusional. And just because Trump said we have a peace deal does not mean we have a peace deal. Now, I get that he wants to aggrandize his achievement, and I give him all the credit in the world for the achievement that he actually made. Like, I'm not minimizing that. He did help get the hostages home, the living ones home. And hopefully the dead ones will come home soon too. But it's not a peace deal. Not even close, okay? Don't get it twisted. There is no peace treaty, okay? There isn't even a peace plan. And whatever the plan is that they've agreed to, they're already violating that agreement, which means they are not actors in good faith. They are doing everything they can to demonstrate to us that they are acting in bad faith. They are not acting in good faith. They are very much doing the opposite of that. So, whatever you want to believe, you go right ahead and believe that. But I'm telling you the facts as they are, is that what you think is happening is not actually the way that you may be perceiving it. Okay, like Israel is dealing here with a situation where our interlocutors are bad actors with bad intentions, operating in bad faith, and they've done everything they can, physically and verbally, to demonstrate to us that they are not going to hold up their end of the bargain. They are already breaking the agreement. Right? So because they're already breaking the agreement, it means that Israel does not have a partner for peace, right? Does not have even a partner to negotiate a true cessation of violence. Right? They actually are we are just in an ongoing war. Now, if they're minimally intelligent, they will enter something like a hudna, which, if you don't know what that is basically like a truce But it's not a real truce. It's a truce that they will break at any time that they feel like it, as soon as they feel they have some kind of advantage to attack. Right? And this is something that dates all the way back to the times of Muhammad, the founder of Islam, right? The prophet to the Muslims, the last prophet they call him. And it's just a fact, whether you like it or not, that they will enter into these hudnas where they may break the truce at any time that they want without any consequence as far as they're concerned. They have no moral compunction about it whatsoever. They may attack us at any time. And a hudna can last up to 15 years and they can even renew it. But typically, they will break it much sooner than that, right? And in fact, you can look at previous hudnas that they've had with Israel. They always broke them sooner than, the end date. And that's because they're not trustworthy. They're a dangerous, violent group of basically, I don't want to call them barbarians because barbarians were too respectable and have too much honor compared to these people, right? They're like, human beings who do monstrous acts. And like they do seriously monstrous acts, right? The barbarity, if you want to call it that, but again, I would use a worse word. The evil that they do in their acts is completely despicable and says a lot about who they are and how they behave and the kind of terrible things that they're willing to do to achieve their aims, right? For example, on October 7th, 2023, they attacked Israel with a very specific goal in mind: to derail the peace plan between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Now, something that may have happened this week is that Trump may have succeeded in convincing many more countries to actually enter the Abraham Accords now that they continuously say the war is over. And so it may be in Israel's interest to maintain this kind of standoff where there'll be clashes, there'll be skirmishes, there'll be firefights, but there won't be a full-blown war, even though the Hamas will be blatantly violating the deal every step of the way, only because Israel will want to get deals with these other countries, which may be in Israel's long-term interest. That is certainly true from a diplomatic point of view. However, from a military point of view, Israel is shooting itself in the foot once again. Israel is not actually going to have an outright military victory in which its opponent declares a surrender. Okay. Now some of you will say, "Oh, they don't need to. Don't force them to surrender. It's humiliating." Excuse me. In the history of warfare, this is how wars end: the winner wins and declares victory. The loser surrenders. Okay. And a decent, respectable, winning, victorious side will respect the surrender and will then make peace with its enemy. Okay. And they won't go around slaughtering all of them. And that's exactly how it would be with Israel winning and Hamas surrendering. However, if the shoe is on the other foot with evil actors such as Hamas, if Israel were ever to surrender, the Hamas would actually slaughter every Israeli, because that's exactly what their goal is. They would not even accept an Israeli surrender, but they would say, "Okay, sure, you can surrender, and I'm going to kill all of you." And if you don't believe that, well, you're an idiot, okay? Because they've said it many times. Hello, man, I see you. So yeah, Hamas is basically not trustworthy. They are POSs, and if you think that for some reason Israel should be trusting them right now, and for the sake of diplomacy, we should be holding the line because peace with other countries is more valuable than a war with Hamas, I'm sorry, but I have to disagree with you. And why do I say that? Because after 77 years of making deals, these scumbags have not learned their lesson. After 77 years of fighting them and kicking their asses kinetically in every fight, and they've not been forced to surrender, they have not stopped wanting to fight us. After 77 years of being a state in Israel, for all the peace deals we've made, not a single one of them has led to a truly warm peace. And I mean that even with the UAE. And I have many wonderful friends and people that I do business with who travel to the UAE or who are from the UAE, and they're great people. But you know what? We don't have a real peace with them, okay? Why do I say that? The average population there, I'm talking about people on the street, still hate Israel because they're still brainwashed idiots, because their government still brainwashes them, even though they have peace with us. And I know you can tell me, no, no, but the UAE is changing and all these countries in the Gulf are changing. Yeah, my ass, okay? They're changing, but too slowly, okay? I don't respect it. I respect many people there, many wonderful people there, but all those countries are still ruled by dictators. So they're still using Israel as a scapegoat to deflect from their own problems that they created, to distract people from the real problems that they created. Okay? So that shit is not flying with me. And I do not value their diplomatic relations more than outright victory against the Palestinians at this point. Okay? Why? Well, as I've said, because if we don't have that outright victory, if we don't have the absolute unconditional surrender of our enemy, then they are just going to be more motivated to do the same thing on an even bigger scale next time. And that means for now, you can be assured of one thing. Until Israel learns its lesson and actually defeats its enemy, unfortunately, there is an extremely high probability that there's going to be another attack like October 7th again in the future, and it will probably be bigger and worse. And that is a sad fact. And that is a horrible, horrible situation for Israel to find itself in after 2 years. We've sacrificed nearly 1,000 soldiers in combat, even more, you include those who died on October 7th, who died in the line of duty to protect this country, and nearly 1,000 civilians were murdered on that day. And if you add up the additional hundreds that died in the last 2 years, it's more than 1,000. We've lost more than a couple thousand people. And don't tell me, but the Palestinians lost 60,000 in Gaza. Yeah, that's the fucking problem, because Gaza is run by Hamas and they refuse to get rid of Hamas. If you're going to tell me that 2.2 million people, with or without arms, cannot stand up against 20 to 50,000 armed people, then all I can tell you is they're chicken shit bastards and they don't deserve a country. Okay? Hello there. Yeah, my diplomatic niceties are not in this video. Okay? You want my diplomatic niceties, maybe go find one of my older videos where I was still being very nice diplomatically, however, speaking the truth always, as ever. By the way, if you like these kind of videos, make sure you follow me or subscribe or whatever it is on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button so you get more updates from me if you want to actually hear the real truth of what is happening here, because I bring you this information. I've been in this game of political analysis and understanding what's going on and counterterrorism and things of that nature for an extremely long time, more than several decades. And I can tell you at many different levels I've operated in many different ways, and I know this stuff inside out and out. I've written literally books about it. I helped write the Encyclopedia of the Arab-Israel Conflict. I'm not even joking. It's a book by Greenwood Press. You can go see that I actually am one of the authors of that. And I've written quite a lot, especially about these terrible kind of groups. I know exactly how they operate, and this is one of my fields of expertise. So if you like this kind of high-level expert information that goes back several decades and more, like and follow, and I will continue to bring you the truth about this information to the best of my ability. And let's get the word out about what I'm talking about here, because this is really a situation that is frankly untenable for the state of Israel. We absolutely cannot just have a fake peace deal, which isn't peace at all, which is the Hamas literally saying, we are not respecting this deal. We're not giving up our weapons. We're not removing ourselves from power. We're going to remain a force in the area. Right? And they're saying we don't agree to any part of this deal except the first phase, which is mostly completed, not fully, but mostly completed at this point. And at this point, going forward, there is basically nothing that they agree to in the deal. Okay? People have pointed out, oh, they disagree with 14 of the points or 12 of the points. No, they disagree with everything except the very first few points. Other than the very first point of the plan, to de-radicalize Gaza, which of course is not something that can just be done overnight. It's going to take many years to do that. They even agree to that. Why would they? They consider themselves, a radical. They consider themselves, who they are. And look, I've said this many times. They're not even radical. I know, shocking. They're literalists. Okay, if you don't know the difference between a literalist Arab or a literalist Muslim and an actual radical Muslim, you got a new thing coming. They are literalist Muslims. What does that mean? That means they read the Quran and literally take it word for word, letter by letter, and interpret it in the strictest possible way and in the most violent possible way. The real radicals of Islam are those who are actually willing to reform their views as presented in the Quran. They are the radicals. So when people say that we should de-radicalize Gaza, actually they're wrong. We have to radicalize Gaza to make them progress. We have to make them radically different than the literal interpretation. And you can tell me, well, that's just semantics, but I'm telling you, semantics matter. Okay? Definitions of words matter. Just like when I tell you that people who claim to be pro-Palestinian, they're not. They are pro-terrorist because they support either the Palestinian Authority or the Hamas or some other terrorist organization that oppresses the Palestinians and refuses to give them their freedom. If you believe what I'm just saying is correct, if you agree with it, spread this video around to your friends. Tell them, show them, clip this. I don't care. Do whatever you got to do. Spread it on social, right? Tell people who say they're pro-Palestinian are anti-Palestinian. And if you look factually at history, the only people that have ever actually given the Palestinians land that they've actually accepted is Israel. Israel gave them Area A. Israel gave them joint control over Area B. That's in Judea and Samaria. And Israel gave them all of Gaza. All of it. And what did they do? In Areas A, in Areas B, and in Gaza, intifadas, war after war, obviously culminating in October 7th as the current round of warfare between Israel and the Palestinians, right? So that is why it is important, from my point of view, to A, get the definitions correctly, reframe the labels on the words, because it makes no sense, none whatsoever, to say that these people are pro-Palestinian or to call the Hamas radicals when the people that support the Hamas are not pro-Palestinian. The only real pro-Palestinians are actually Zionists who believe that Arabs have the right to live in this land with us in peace as long as they follow the law, right? As long as they're willing to live here in peace, which means to follow the law, right? And not be violent, right? And so on and so forth with the definitions, right? And people who say that the Hamas are radicals are liars. They are ignorant because they don't understand that in fact Hamas and Islamists and Salafists and all these violent people that you would say, well, they're extremely violent. Yes, they are extremely violent, but they're not radicals. They are old school conservative, extremely conservative. You can call them far right conservative in their religion, okay? They're not liberals. They're not the radical left in Islam. They are the extremely violent right wing, conservative right wing of Islam, okay? That's where they are on the spectrum of politics. And you may not understand this. It may not make sense in your westernized brain because you may not be familiar with this concept of Muslims who are extremely violent actually being conservative, but that's how it is, okay? It's a religion that has not reformed itself. It is a religion that still, the literalists adhere to an extremely violent view of things. But that is not radical to them. That is normal to them. That is literally being a literalist. That is what that means. And so if you think that Hamas is just going to suddenly decide, you know what? Yeah, let's just give up our weapons and have peace with Israel. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but you are kidding yourself. Right? They are not going to do that. They are not going to make peace with Israel. They are not going to even have a long term ceasefire with us. Right? They are not looking for a path to exist next to Israel. Their ideology does not allow it. Okay? Their ideology calls for the destruction of any state that is run, built, maintained, established, or whatever by Jews. Okay? Or by the way, anybody who doesn't follow their exact beliefs. They are violent in the extreme, but they are extremely conservative as literalists. They are not radicals. And I know that may confuse you, and that's fine. May it confuse you. I hope it confuses you well and that you learn from this confusion. Because, truth be told, um, if you don't get it, you probably need some educating, as a friend of mine once used to say. You probably need a little bit of education to learn a thing or two about this very, very violent group of terrible people who, again, I consider them to be scumbags. I don't consider them to be very human. I know they are human, but barely. Okay? They are not people that I consider to be the highest quality human beings that we can have. And I don't really care if that offends you and your sensitivities and your political correctness. I consider them to be human scum. Okay? I believe the world would be better without their existence. Why? Because look at the atrocities they commit. Gleefully. Look at how they behaved after they released the hostages. Look exactly how they behaved when the peace was supposedly announced, which again, there is no peace. Look at how they behaved. They came out singing and dancing and singing, "Kill all the Jews." Does that seem like a people who are willing to move past their errors? Does that seem like a people who are willing to say, you know what, we screwed up and we should change the error of our ways? Or does that seem like a people who are looking for more revenge attacks and all this other kind of nonsense? They want to attack the Jews again. They were literally singing Chaybar Chaybar al Yahud, Ya Yahud, which is a scream that they chant when they're in a frenzy, frankly, or they want to work themselves up into a frenzy, and they recall the days when their prophet Muhammad lied to the Jews, broke his word, invaded Khaybar, slaughtered all the Jews, beheaded 600 of them, forcefully took one of them as his wife, as in raped her, and made her his wife, and said that he did it to protect her from being raped by all the other Muslim men of Khaybar. You're going to tell me that that's a person that anybody should follow? You're going to tell me that that's a religion that anyone should respect? Well, okay, that's your interpretation. You're going to tell me that people that follow that respect, that follow that religion, and that want to do the exact same thing should be respected? I don't think so. You're going to tell me that people who support Hamas have valid reasons for doing so? No, you're wrong. You're factually, provably, demonstrably wrong. Now, you may be too much of a retard to understand why you're wrong. That's your fucking problem. I can't, can't fix stupid. If you wanted to fix stupid, you should have gone to school and you should have learned a thing or two or 10,000 things, because really, you most probably had that opportunity and you blew it. You know, it is a demonstrable fact that the Jews have been targets of the Muslims, as have Christians, for more than 1,400 years now, practically 1,500 years, right, since the time of Muhammad. And it is very unfortunate, but it is very true that the very same Muslim people that attacked Israel on October 7th, 2023, are attempting to do it again as we speak. Right now, before they've even released a single one of the remaining 24 dead hostages, presumed all dead. They've not even released them all, and they're already planning to attack us again. How are they planning to attack us again? Well, I've already explained to you. They refuse to give up power, right? They refuse to give up their guns. They refuse to withdraw from the scene. They refuse to hand over power to an international organization, right? Even a coalition of mostly Arab soldiers. No, they don't want to do any of that. They want to rearm, they want to regroup, they want to retrain, they want to replan, and they want to attack again. They don't want to wait for it. They want to do it ASAP. So, do I trust them? Not as far as I can spit. In fact, not as far as I can breathe. Hello, Travelthology. Hello, people writing in, I think, Chinese. Um, Hi there. If you guys like what I'm writing, by all means, please follow or subscribe and like this. I appreciate it. Let's get the word out, because what I tell you comes from decades and decades of experience. I am familiar with this topic in the yeah, at the highest levels, in ways that, well, most people who talk about this stuff on YouTube, it doesn't even come close. Most people you watch on YouTube, not to denigrate them, do a great job. Many of them, they're frankly great communicators. That's why they have so many followers. But they're saying things that are sometimes factually incorrect. If you actually want factually correct analysis, on even the very smallest details that even many wonderful communicators get wrong, subscribe to my channel, because, well, I'm the guy that knows the facts, right? I'm one of the people that actually knows this stuff. And there are many people who do know this stuff, but most of them don't talk about it very much on YouTube. Yeah, just because you watch some person who's been a talking head on TV for 5, 10, 15, or even 20 years, that doesn't mean they're an expert, okay? That just means they got lucky, they got a lucky break, and they started blabbing, and then they were given one script after another to read. And that's what they do, is they read scripts. They're not actually experts in this topic. They haven't actually studied it. They haven't actually been in the field with it for many decades, writing about it and dealing with this stuff in the ways that I have. Not even close. I'm not saying I'm the be all and end all of the knowledge on this stuff, but I am saying, okay, that there are many people who, just because they are able to get a large following, they're able to convince people that they know this topic. Just because you can get a large following does not mean you're an expert, okay? All it means is you put in some decent production into your video. Yeah, I have more important things to do than to sit around and make my videos look pretty, okay? So that's why I don't do that. I focus on the facts. I focus on the actual analysis, right? So yeah, by all means, feel free to submit. What is this here? My history knowledge went back to 1948 till last week. Took a few days to get myself further informed. Buddy, it'll take you more than a few days. This history between the Jews and the world at large is thousands of years old, and the history between the Jews and the Muslims goes back to Muhammad, way before 1948. Okay, 1948 is very modern history in Jewish history. It's like yesterday. Okay, 77 years ago. I mean, it's like yesterday. Okay, there are people who are alive who are much older than that. So that is not at all a significant amount of time. However, if you don't know the history even past that point, or barely past that point, you're missing many significant, very important facts and milestones and historical events that are critical to comprehending this stuff. So my hat's off to you for studying more and learning more. But man, if you just started learning about what happened before 1948, you are just at the beginning. And I can tell you, the further back you go, the worse it is for Muslims. Okay, they've committed so many atrocities against the Jewish people. Literally, I don't know if you know this. In 1948, you say you know until 1948. Are you aware that even before 1948, there were Jews being expelled from Arab countries and Muslim countries, including Iraq and other places, where they were literally butchering Jews left and right, in Yemen, in Iraq, and other places, and Jews were escaping from there. Many of them came here to Israel, even before there was an Israel, when it was still British Mandate Palestine. And they came here to help build the state. And then they stayed when there was a state. And they finally had a place to call home that was a country built for Jews, by Jews, about Jews, and with open and full equality for anybody who wants to live here, as long as they follow the law. So you can be any religion, any race, any gender, any whatever. It doesn't matter. You can have any political ideology you want, as long as you are peaceful and you follow the law. And unfortunately, we've been living in a country in which too many people are allowed to basically not do those things, and they are too easily able to cause massive damage. Now, not, you know, Israelis don't generally do that, but people living within our borders in lands that they call Palestinian, they have. Okay, and Arabs who call themselves Palestinian, they do not live here peacefully, right? They don't, and they don't technically live in our country, right? They live in lands that are under dispute, right? Disputed territories. Or as I call them, they are Palestine occupied territories because the Palestinians have occupied Israeli land. Now, I don't mind that they live there and they can live there. There you go. But that was taught in my school time in Europe about 40 years ago. Right, exactly. I understand. Yes, learned that from a Jewish YouTube who originates from Iraq. Was that Tal, by the way? Tal is amazing. If it's Tal Iran, the traveling clat, he's a great guy. But again, he's an amazing YouTuber, like in terms of presenting facts and evidence and stuff. But even he, okay, he's a very young guy. I don't fault him for this at all. To me, compared to me, he's very relatively young, and even he sometimes makes some pretty important factual mistakes when he speaks to people about this topic. Now, it could be because of in the heat of the moment, or it could be for whatever reason. Okay, it doesn't matter what the reason is, but sometimes he makes pretty critical, analytical, or explanatory errors where he says something that happened or didn't happen or whatever it might be, and it's factually incorrect. But again, don't get me wrong. I'm not dissing him or discrediting him. He's a great guy, and got an amazing channel. What is this? View message. Grandmother fled from Nazi Germany and never want to share her experiences. Same as my mom, who was 5 when the Dutch were invaded. Yeah, man. I mean, I grew up in a family with a Holocaust survivor and a survivor of Gamal Abdel Nasser's Egypt. So I'm fully aware of what it's like to live in that situation. Fortunately for me, my parents did not hide the facts or the experiences from me. They taught me every single thing they could about it from the youngest possible age so that I would be aware of my situation in the world and that I would not have any um, kooky beliefs, that I wouldn't be misinformed, right? And I believe it is an important thing for us to teach to our children and our children's children and so on and so forth to make sure that every future generation learns about this stuff because it is not a thing we should forget, right? We must always remember who our friends are and who our enemies are and what our enemies did to us, to know the history, to understand what happened, to understand why things happened the way they did, to understand, what could have been done, what was not possible to do, that Israel and the Jews could do is for Israel to exist and to be strong. And whether you like it or not, but again, this goes back to me talking about other influencers. I think these other influencers like Tal and Sahar, they do an amazing job. I love these guys. They're great. Sometimes they make mistakes in presenting their information, but again, they're very minor, very, very, very minor errors, right? They're not, I don't criticize them for those things like at all. I'm just saying these are things that you wouldn't say if you have an additional few decades of experience or a couple of decades of experience additional in presenting these facts, right? And presenting this information. But that's okay. They have a great way of presenting things. It attracts a big audience and it gets the word out about a lot of things. And they do a great job of communicating that. And I love their work. I really think they do a great job. And I think you should go and support them if you can, because they honestly deserve it. And like they put a lot of time and effort into this. And that is their main thing. Like that's what they do, right? For me, this is my passion. It's very different. I tell you these things because I know these things, and I spent decades and decades working on this stuff and analyzing this and making analyses and making predictions, if you will, and unfortunately being correct too many times. Yes, tall and you subscribe to many more to learn history, Jewish, every week family experience. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tall is amazing, man. Definitely, if you support him, that's great. If you can support him and you don't yet, I definitely recommend doing it. He's a fantastic guy. So are so many other people, Rebecca Barsef, and even places like Tuki TV and all these other great apostate prophets. There's just so many wonderful people who are making the case for Israel in their own unique way. And that's great. But so many of them, to be frank, as great as they are at explaining this stuff, and the thing is, You don't have to be a genius to understand this stuff because it's quite obvious. The evidence presents itself very clearly, but it takes many years of experience to deeply understand the nuances and know the subtleties of the facts that are commonly misrepresented. Um, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, right? But I'm just saying I have more than several decades of experience on this stuff, so I don't make sophomoric mistakes on these kind of errors. Um, exactly. If one does not know the history, one cannot look at the future. Yeah, absolutely. If you don't know the history, how can you know the future? Yo just popped up in my feed. You just popped up in my feed. So, well, thank you very much for your subscription. I do appreciate it. I appreciate if you like it and share it. That'd be fantastic. I'm just delighted that you're here. Appreciate it. You know, unfortunately, so many of my forecasts have become correct. You know, my predictions of solutions have also been correct, like saying that Israel should build a separation wall to keep the sides separate. And I was correct about that. And I also had very specific tactical suggestions to make it secure and to not make it fail. And unfortunately, on October 7th, they did not practice those security tactics. But most of the days, from the time that they put up the fence around Gaza or the wall around Judea and Samaria, we have been following those security tactical suggestions, and we have seen a marked decline in terrorist attacks against Israel since the wall went up and since the fence went up. Now, of course, security, on October 7th was a massive failure because they allowed security to be lax on a high holiday, which is unbelievably stupid. Considering that for the past 50 years, it has been the tradition of the Israeli army to actually beef up security around the high holidays for obvious reasons, namely that we are constantly under attack and they love to attack us on high holidays, just exactly as they did in October of 1973 on Yom Kippur, which was precisely 50 years and one day before the attack of October 7th, 2023. Right? The Yom Kippur started on October 6th, 1973. Fact checker, never take someone's word true instantly. Wise word for grandma. Well, yeah, your grandma absolutely was wise. I also like to check facts. I am not just a believer. Said, unfortunately, this deal is not a deal. We don't have a deal with the Hamas. They have already broken it. They intend to break it. They have told us they intend to break it. So there's literally no reason to believe that they will actually honor it. And it would be at Israel's peril to just believe that they will honor it and to just simply honor President Trump's request that we don't mess it up by reacting if they break the deal in some terrible way. The fact is, they've already broken the deal in some terrible way, and we should absolutely be retaliating against them for it, despite the fact that we're still waiting for 24 dead hostages' remains to be returned to Israel, because we have actually no idea if or when they will be returned at all. We don't know. As far as we know, they're not returning them. They said they are, but I don't believe them. Why should I believe them when they are historically proven to be liars and criminals and gangsters and thugs and murderous terrorists? It would be absolutely ignorant and stupid to simply believe them. So, yeah, I don't trust them. And I don't think anybody else should either. And I'm not apologetic about it. And I don't apologize for calling them scumbags and pigs, because that's what they are. Anybody who celebrates murdering people, innocent civilians who've done literally nothing, they're scumbags and pigs. Hence why the Free Palestine movement scare the crap out of. Why does the Free Palestine movement scare the crap out of you? It shouldn't scare the crap out of you. We should be strong, not scared. Okay, the Jewish people are strong. We have an amazing army. We have amazing people. We know very well how to defend ourselves against these weak cowards. They are cowards. Think about it. They don't fight wearing uniforms. They fight in civilian clothes. What kind of courageous, strong fighter does that? They're not courageous fighters. Yes, sure. If you have secret services and all this kind of stuff, and you have a state, sure, occasionally you may need to do things undercover. I get that. But they're regular fighters don't wear uniforms when they fight. Their regular fighters do not show their faces in when they're wearing uniforms. They hide when they're wearing uniforms. They hide their faces because they know if we see their faces, they're toast. And when we shoot at them in Gaza, right, they're wearing civilian clothes. And what you'll see is they'll pop out of a hole, shoot, and then duck back in the hole, come out the other side of a building or a tunnel or something, and you won't know if it's them or something or someone else. That's what they do. That's their tactic. Right? To actually break the rules of combat, they'll do anything they can to have a kinetic win, but they don't get many kinetic wins, and certainly not in war overall, because they simply don't have what it takes, obviously. Hamas will never honor it already. Exactly. Hamas is already broken, 100%. But do not fear them, my friend. They are not worthy of your fear. They're not God. They're men, and they're horrible men. And what they deserve is to be wiped out. And yeah, I don't believe that they're going to hold this deal. If you think that Hamas is seriously a partner in peace, you got a new thing coming. Again, I don't care if you tell me, well, Qatar stopped paying them, so they have no choice. Yeah, that may be true. There may be a group of their political echelon that decides, you know what, the grift is over, and and Qatar won't give us any money, and we won't be able to get any money from anyone if we keep fighting. But guess what? There's enough crazy people in the ideologist camp, and many of them are very ideologically motivated, much more than there are politically grifters in their group that run the show. They're armed ones, the ones that actually have guns, that ultimately will decide whether or not they're going to give up their guns, even if their political bosses tell them, "You're doing this, we kill you." The ones with the guns are actually the ones doing the killing. So it's really ultimately up to them, and they know it. And that's why the ones who are the billionaires and who run the show live outside of Gaza. Partly because why would they want to live in Gaza? Second of all, when they can live like kings in Qatar. And second of all, because they know that if they lived in Gaza and ultimately the poor people of Gaza pressured the militants, the so called militants, the terrorists, to do something, um, their necks would be on the line, not the guys with the guns. The guys with the guns necks are on the line because of the IDF, not because of the people of Gaza. The people of Gaza love the guys with the guns in general. And you could tell me there's so many Gazans who hate Hamas. You can't prove that. There's some Gazans who hate Hamas. We know that. We know there's thousands of them who hate Hamas. Maybe a million of them hate Hamas. We have zero evidence that it's anywhere near a million. Okay. But it may be. But we have no evidence. You know why we have no evidence? Because all these years, and they still support them. Publicly, they still say they support them. Now, you could say, well, they're doing that under duress or they're doing that out of fear. Maybe, but that shows they don't have the courage as a people to fight against what's wrong, to fight what's right for their own better future. And that means that they are basically living lives as juveniles who do not take their life seriously and who fail to be responsible adults. And they absolutely do not take they mean nothing in their words. They're cowards. They're not good people overall. You can point to me to any good example. I know there's good examples. I personally know good people from there. Okay. But that doesn't mean that as a population in general, they are good. They are not. And yes, I will generalize. In general, they are a bad people. They have bad intentions and they have a bad ideology. And until it ends, there is no peace. And that's all there is to it. Thank you very much for being here. You guys are the real ones. Appreciate it. Thanks again for liking and subscribing and all that stuff. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video. So make sure you hit that little bell thing with, all the notifications. All right. Catch you later. Peace. Shalom from Israel.